Being distinctive and memorable is literally everything. It's about like looking different enough so that you're almost like this glitch in the system, and that when someone sees you for the first time in the feed, they like their brain perks up and goes, "Oh, that's different."
Sarah Hart is the founder and creative director of Hart Co. I've seen her working with lots of names that you've heard of. She does lots of cool things with branding. She helps entrepreneurs grow through smart strategic design. And I am a startup marketer, and I was always putting design on the back burner. So I would say, in terms of my skill set, I have so much to learn from you because I think you know how to do it right, especially on LinkedIn when it comes to sales funnels, visual sales funnels, as you call them. And I'm just
Oh,
really excited to kind of dig in and see how people who are building their personal brands can really learn how design can be a differentiator for them. For all the marketers out there, or for all the founders, or anyone who really maybe hasn't taken design as seriously as they should, I think after we hear from you, we'll probably take it a little more seriously.
that would be fantastic. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the questions and see where this conversation goes, Sarah. For those of us, we're probably all using Canva out there. We could use Canva templates. Why do you think, as a brand designer, why do you think that that's not enough today? Like, why does it matter that you're investing in a brand and in sort of distinctive design beyond just Canva templates?
Yeah, yeah. I think especially for founder-led brands, like your first impression is no longer your website or your newsletter. It's likely like a like tiny square on someone's phone. And so in this like busy feed, what's getting so much busier with like ChatGPT and just like the amount of content out there is just crazy. Being distinctive and memorable is literally everything. It's about like looking different enough so that you're almost like this glitch in the system, and that when someone sees you for the first time in the feed, they like their brain perks up and goes, "Oh, that's different." And this really ties into psychology. Like there's the von Roster effect that shows that our brain remembers things that stand out and are different. And so basically we all have like these built-in like weird detectors in our brain. So it's pretty cool. And a really good example of this, and I'll share my screen, is Stripe. So let me just like do that.
As you're doing that, as you're saying, like our brain has detectors. I mean, I certainly have a detector. If I think an image has been created with AI, I like instantly just like discount it and just sort of keep moving on. So I think even now more than ever with like all the AI looking images, you just kind of just ignore them because they're like, I don't know, you just
Yes, it's a
don't want
big
to see
problem.
them.
It's a big problem, and it's actually really easy just to like tweak them to make sure that they're on brand for you and different enough. But they all are like it's like
If it looks the
super.
same, right? That's the
Yeah,
problem.
in someone's brain they're thinking this is AI. You don't want them to think this is AI when they see your stuff. So yeah, it's too easy, right? And then right now it's kind of a cool time because everyone's playing with it. It's new and different, but soon it's just going to be overwhelming. You really need to have that distinctive element in your brand. So let me just
Absolutely.
share. Got some like Canva. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so I think a really good example of this is Stripe. So way back when, like they were one of many, many, many like fintech brands that were blue, right? Like this trust me blue color that, every, financial brand needed to be. You can kind of see it over here. And then what Stripe did is that they did a strategic brand and they went all on this like powerful gradient aesthetic. And so that was a strategic brand move, right? That was a strategic visual move to differentiate them from everyone else and like position them really differently from their competition. And it worked really well. They did very, very well after the strategic rebrand. They're actually like one of the most, like, I think they're one of the most cited brands for inspiration, like one of the best brands in the tech industry.
How long ago was the gradient? Is this recent? I'm curious because in my head, I think the gradient is now like played out, or like I don't know. So this was, it must have been a few years ago.
I think this was 2020. So this
Okay.
was like revolutionary. And that's the thing too, like people are going to copy you, but the way that like distinctive works in our brain is like if you were kind of the first to market with this signature visual style, then people like save that in their memories, right? As you. And so whenever someone sees something like this, they think of Stripe, right? Because Stripe
Yeah.
did it first pretty much and they owned it first. So that's yeah, definitely everybody copies this and they just look like copycats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't copy. You want to have your own distinct thing. Like you can see how Stripe really pivoted from what the competition was doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so the question is so I would say out of my marketing knowledge, brand is definitely my weaker area. And I always say, I wish I could have a design partner. That's why I have you on the call, because I'm going to learn as much as I can from you. So if you're thinking, okay, this is great, I believe it, I want to have a distinctive brand, where do I start? Like, what kind of principles would I might want to focus on if I'm either a founder or I'm someone who's building a personal brand? I feel overwhelmed. I'm thinking, okay, let me start with first principles. Like, what should I wrap my head around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, there are so many design principles. There's like a million invisible rules of design, and it can be really overwhelming. So I actually created my own framework that really helps people to focus on the most important parts that are actually going to affect your sales process.
That's why we need to talk to you, because you've made it easy for people who, seriously, because I always feel overwhelmed. Like, there's just so much to know. And let me know your secrets. How do we do it?
So I call this the visual sales funnel. You already sort of mentioned that. So I can walk through like these are the top 4 things that you need to have for your brand for it to actually be, pushing people through your sales funnel. So let me share. I have like a visual that goes with this.
This is great, because you've tied it to what matters, not just brand for brand's sake, but like brand to revenue, like brand to growing your business.
Right. And like it's really important because your visuals really can push people away from working with you, right? That's the biggest thing, is like if you don't do it right, like you're going to get lost in the feed, you're going to be completely ignored. And if you're not like designed correctly, like people actually it will affect your sales too. So it's important to get these parts right. So let me sort of walk through what that looks like. Let's go back to this share screen. Okay. For some reason it keeps on jumping around. So the visual sales funnel. So top of funnel, we just talked about that. That's like when people are first seeing you in the feed, and that's where distinctiveness really matters. You need to stand out with that distinctive, unique element, like we talked about Stripe, right? Like we need something that's unique to us. And then once you like embed your distinctive brand in your audience's brain, you need to like hold their attention, right? So you need to there's so many different design principles, like using faces, because psychologically we are all like we just can't stop looking at faces. You can use like things like faces in your designs. You can use infographics and visual analogies to really like stop the scroll and pull people in. So there's a ton of tactics that you can use to, like, once you are in the feed, actually hold people's attention in it. And so that's the next piece. And then once someone has been following you, for a while, and then they're going from, like, let's say social to your website or some opt-in, we need to make sure that, every piece looks cohesive, because if someone goes from your carousel to your website and it looks different, you're creating confusion in your audience's brain, and confusion will kill your conversion. So it's really important to make sure that everything has a visual through line. You don't have to have a straight jacket, for your branding, but you do need to have distinctive visual elements through every piece that look like you. And then finally, when they're ready to buy from you, they're at that place where they're like, okay, I'm ready to click the buy now button. It's really important that you use high quality design to position yourself and your offer as the best choice. Was a cool study about this where it showed that good design actually increases purchase intent. And so if you don't look high quality and your offer is like high price, there's going to be a disconnect in your audience's mind. So it's really important to make sure that you look refined and high qualities. If you can get all 4 of these right, then you're golden. Like these are the 4 tactics that, in design,
love that.
You're going to smooth the path to the sale for you and make sure that you're not losing people in the funnel.
So would this be a good time for you to share some examples like how you've applied this framework to people, maybe people have seen on their LinkedIn feeds before?
Yeah, for sure. So I can talk about a couple of my own clients as well. So I can just like pop over to Caitlin.
Yeah.
So me and Caitlin worked together in 2020. 2020 is coming up like 3 times.
I can't believe that, because her branding is so good that, if you follow me, you must have seen Caitlin in your feed. You must have seen these graphics. Like, they definitely stick in your brain. You may have even joined her course. I know some people who have joined her course. So this is a great example. I'm so curious, like, what the process was like, and what did her before look like? Maybe you don't have that, but this is such a great example.
I do have it. I could find it if we have a minute. Like I could.
Okay, sure.
Want me to? Okay, let me see. I know I have it in here somewhere. Actually,
because this is so good. I'm just curious, like, Yeah,
Yeah.
for the effect. What was the before and after?
Yeah, let me show you. Actually, yeah, I do have a, I think a carousel I'm working on. Let's like shows the before and after. So let me see. Where is the, oh, maybe not this one. I have so many. I use Canva for everything and it just like, it makes it so easy for this stuff. Just like find projects that I've been working on. Okay, this has the before. Here we go. This is the before.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just like standard corporate anybody template. It's not distinctive at all.
Yeah. So like, yeah, at the time too, so it's context is really important, right? Like, because there's trends that happen all the time. And so at the time, everyone was kind of going for like this muted design. And you can see her stuff is very muted, right? Like it's still like the yellow, but it's not,
Very
it's not
safe.
vibrant. And so everybody
Yeah.
was muted. And so we said, we need to stand out. We need something totally different from that. And so we did something really vibrant and bright. So we took that yellow and just exploded it.
I love that. Yes.
And also it was a time too where 2020, not many people were designing, using visual brand in their like personal brand, founder-led brand. And so there was a lot of opportunity to sort of own a color. And so for Caitlin, like that yellow became like a huge differentiator for her. And even like there's even articles that people pointed to, this is one from Growth on Reverse, as like her branding being one of like her growth levers for her, 2020, I think she had a couple thousand followers and then, she totally blew up. But she blew up
Yeah.
because she's an amazing marketer. But the brand is a piece that really helped her stand out in the feed, helped her like embed that into her audience's brain.
Exactly. I mean, I think with any product or person or marketer, you have to have the fundamentals, and the brand is what sort of makes you. It's like an outfit, right? It makes you shine. Oh, you still have to be a great person, but the outfit's going to help you shine in a way, or it's going to just accentuate the things that you want, and really have the right people see you. And then once they see you, you have to have the substance. So I get what you're saying, and I think it's true for whether it's a service, product, or a person. You got to have the goods, and then the brand will help you.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that was the distinctive part of it, like the top of funnel awareness. And then if we go down to interest, like we created, carousel templates. You can see here using like her photos, just like we're using faces in here. We're using like arrows, little things. There's like little tactics in here that hold attention in the feed. And then cohesion wise, just like, not, you can see not every page is exactly the same color, but there is like a visual through line of the yellow in everything. And even when we do, like she does a lot of partner work with different brands, we always make sure to bring in that yellow or like her lightning bolts to make sure everything is like creates that visual through line for her brand. And then the last part, which is like the purchase, like the polish, like if we look at this, right, like it's very muddy. I can't even read what's going on in this testimonial. Like the spacing's a little weird. And so really just like polishing everything up so it has like not like nice white space. There's like a million design principles that go into the polish piece, but like especially when you have a distinctive brand, you got to make sure that you don't overwhelm it and make it look DIY. So really polishing up. So that's kind of like how it works with the visual sales funnel.
I think that with the tools nowadays, it feels like it's easier than ever to create things, whether it's a visual, to create a website, to create the assets that you need. So do you think that, like, how do you compare where we were 5 years ago? Like, it's easier, but does it mean that now you have to do even more to stand out, I guess, because it's easier also just to be templatized?
Yeah, it's really like right now is extremely important to stand out. Like it's just getting so busy. And then also like the lead gen, like most lead gen is changing from referral base to thought leadership base. Like there's a really great, I think I read this survey that talked about how more people are buying from like thought leadership than ever and making them question their existing vendors and switching over. So like where thought leadership is the new lead gen, you got to make sure that in the feed, you got to get attention. You can't just look like everybody else. Maybe your content's great and you go viral, but if no one remembers your brand or knows that it's you, like what's the point? They're not going to remember you later for purchase. And so it's do or die right now.
So you're talking about visuals, like the static visuals. Do you also touch on video? I'm curious, or like how you could do that when it comes to video, if people are also doing like short videos?
I think Jay Klaus did some amazing branded videos because he recently did a rebrand with amazing designer, and he's added like this. He really got a distinctive element for himself because he's got like this VHS video aesthetic that he's added to everything. And I've actually been geeking out because he did like a whole video backdrop and that like kind of like is nostalgic VHS style. And then he's got a little mascot that's like a TV. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you do it. But he also did some short form video that he was using the mascot and like the whole aesthetic. That being said, though, like that stuff still is a lot of work. That's like I don't know, like I think if you can look on brand in your video, I think that's great. But right now, it's still a lot of work to like get a totally fully designed, like amazing short form video created. So
Yeah.
I would be like, I would be a little bit more lenient on that, just because it's a
Okay. So that's like advanced level. If you're saying, okay, getting your visuals sort of is like the first order that you need to, order of operations that you need to get done. Because I think a lot of people that I work with, they're like, oh, like, should I be doing video? And like, I think I also agree with you. We're sort of in this experimental phase where I'm like, yes, I want you to try video on LinkedIn. I encourage people to do that. I encourage them to be authentic, but I don't think you have to have maybe the same level of care when it comes to brand as you would for a visual post. It's like a solid sort of static visual. That's kind
Yeah.
of the approach I take as well.
Until AI takes over and everyone's video looks like, oh, that's like
Yeah.
super on brand, we're not there
Yeah.
yet. Until that becomes so easy that people can do that
Yeah.
themselves, then that it will be important. But right now, we're not at that point.
I think like with the podcast, at least what I try to do is I try to use colors that are consistent with my podcast colors, and then I have like an outro. Like there's certain things I think I also am mindful of. Like it can be a little bit experimental, but it can be, you can see a through line. Okay, yeah, that's Christine. That's part of her purple and the sort of creamer color that I use.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think, you also have to be experimental, right? Like
Yeah.
especially now, like you need to try new things and you can't have your brand as a straitjacket. Like you can't act like it's something that you're like I'm scared to like post something a little different because, I'm afraid it's not as on brand as it should be. Like I think those days are done. Like I've actually been like really researching big brands and how they approach social versus their main brand, and they definitely go a little wild. Like I was talking about Stripe earlier, like they do different stuff for social, like they try different things, like, and it's still on brand because that gradient is always a through line. Like they always
Yeah.
have the gradient, right? And so it still looks like Stripe, but it's not like they'll try different, like they'll do a 3D post, they'll do more of a flat style. They definitely play around with it.
So I love experimentation. I love trying new things. Do you think that there would be like the flip side of it, or things that you think, okay, you should experiment, but these are some mistakes I would avoid making, or common things you do see, especially for like, small startup teams who are like, they want to be experimental and maybe they're like, yeah, they maybe need some framework to think about to, yeah, be a little bit safe. So like, be experimental, but be safe. So what are your thoughts on that, or like common mistakes?
Oh yeah, totally. Like there's people on different sides of the spectrum where like you're like, please just do something consistent. Like you can't just like change your fonts and colors like you know what I mean? Like you can't just, well, you can, but like
It's not good for you.
it's gonna hurt the memorability and recall of your brand. It just will, right? And
Yeah.
so if you can just, nail down that color palette, a graphic style, the font, and then you can kind of like add to it, right? Like I know when I do my stuff, like my color palette is like the pink and the black, and then I have my font. I know that I can kind of experiment within that, right? So I'm kind of creating a box for myself, like a playground that I like. If as long as I have those things, then it's on brand for me, right? So
I love that. So create a playground for yourself. Like color, it sounds like colors and font is like the minimum, and you can do
yes.
that. I actually saw you posted. Did you start a Substack? Was it Substack where you posted
Yeah.
something about using ChatGPT to sort of create your brand? I think there are tools that can help you do that. So I think go check out that guide. I'll link it in the show notes as well. I think it was an interesting take on, okay, you're starting from scratch. What should you do? Is there anything else that you should do besides colors and fonts that you think would be like core to this playground? If we take that metaphor, creating yourself a playground to work in.
Yeah, really the first thing that people should do, and I have actually a prompt for this, but is really just to like check your competitors, like check your industry, because you will be surprised how like obliviously people will copy what the standard visual style is. Like, please, if you are a, AI startup right now, like, please do not use like purple and blue gradients and like futuristic style, because like there's a million brands that look like that, but people don't really notice sometimes. So I actually have a
Yeah.
prompt. It's called a contrast check prompt that will give you the standard looks of your industry and like how to contrast that. So you don't like unintentionally do it, because again, that's like the psychology. It's called the bandwagon effect. We just see what everyone else is doing and we just like naturally do it. We don't really think, oh, like, no, I need to go against that. So
Well,
that's really
that's so interesting because this whole thing we're talking about is like the reason you need a brand is to stand out. And if you go and just subconsciously or consciously follow what everyone's doing, okay, whether that's I totally know this blue and purple gradient. I can just see it in my head. And
important.
like all those companies, they blend together. I really don't know the one from the next.
And
So this is a
it's
really
so
interesting.
easy. Like, you just need a new color. Like, you can do that. Like, you can look futuristic and cool, but please just choose it, at least at the bare
Yeah.
minimum, choose a different color, So
Yeah.
yeah.
And as a starting point, do you think what's helpful? Okay, so I'm not a designer, so I don't know what your thoughts are, but like, do you start with like a mood board, or like, would you start with like, okay, well, references do I actually want? Like, is that a helpful starting point when you're saying, well, what should I do?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, we're talking about founder-led brands right now, right?
So
Like,
I'm
and
thinking about people, yeah, so founder-led brands or people who are doing like, they're trying to build their personal brand. Maybe they're an exec at a tech company or something like that.
yeah, really what you want to start with is like your messaging. Like what is the, yeah, like what is the message that you want to put out there? Or like, what's your brand strategy? Like, what's the thing that you're known for? And how can the visuals amplify that, right? Like, a good example is one of my clients, Susan. So she, like, her thing is, sorry, she's in like the financial space, and she has a tagline, calm is the new KPI. And so the visuals we created for her are all about amplifying that message, right? And so I should probably,
Yeah, I
let me
love this.
just share.
Well, obviously, I love it goes back to messaging because that's where I spend most of my time. I'm a content messaging person. That's where I spent most of my career, and I think I always do that sort of in a silo and then work with the designer later. But it sounds like the earlier you can kind of bring those two together, the better because it becomes more cohesive.
Well, yeah, because your design will amplify your message and your strategy. Like, and it,
Yeah.
when done right, they all come together, and it's just like this killer power move, right? Of like them all working together. So I've actually, like, I recommend to all my clients to take, like, I have courses that I recommend for messaging and, brand strategy, for them to like get a good idea of what that is first, because yeah, it's really a power move when you get all three kind of working together.
Thinking about my own struggles as a marketer when it comes to working with designers. And when you say these things, they're very obvious. Some of them are very obvious, but I think back into my experience and how departments act very separately. And anyway,
Yeah, like it's
it's like it sounds like you require them to think about, do this deep thinking before you work with them. So I think that's is important.
yeah. Yeah, it's really important. You can't skip that stuff, right? And I've had people I've worked with who I didn't work with them because they had just started their business. And so we waited, I think, a year. And then they even said, like, I'm so happy we waited, because the visuals now represent my messaging and my brand strategy. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
all comes together. And so that's actually one of my biggest, like, I don't want to work with I don't want to work with someone who doesn't have that kind of like at least started. Like, I'd rather you put yourself out there, be messy, and figure out what you're doing, and then come back, and then we'll work on it together. Yeah, Susan. So Susan's messaging was like, calm is the new KPI. And so everyone else in the financial sort of services space is like very blue and like very boring. And so with Susan, like, we use like sort of like nature imagery. We use really playful fonts to show like this calm piece of her business. And she even said like the visual process actually like cemented the messaging even better. Like, it made her like it just like lit up her brain and was like, oh yeah, like this brings all the pieces together for me for her brand, because visuals are just so powerful in that way, in terms of like when you actually see something, it makes it real. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a cool
I love it.
experience.
And I wouldn't even think financial services when I'm looking at this. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it does have I want to say like trust factor or something. Like when you say financial services, I don't look at this and go like, oh, it's too like far out there, it's too experimental or something. I can see the sort of groundedness of the color decisions, and yeah, I really like the result that you came up with.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, right? Like I talk about the distinctiveness a lot, but that polish is really important, especially, in her industry. Like we didn't want to like you don't want it to be too over the top playful. And so what we did is we really just used the two colors. So you can see here it's like just green and black and white. It's like by sort of stripping the color palette down, it gives us more space to use playful elements without overwhelming the brand, right? So that's actually a technique that you can use is like if you strip out certain parts and like simplify it, then you get to have a little bit more room to do something a little bit more creative.
Yeah, interesting. Like removing something actually, removing some of the options makes it more focused. I like that. Okay, so you were talking about some things that you do. I mean, throughout this whole conversation, you talking about different tactics. Does anything else come to mind that might be useful? Maybe things that like people who are just starting out in this might be able to try. You yourself, you use Canva a lot. Maybe there's some things, specific things in Canva that maybe we haven't thought of. So I'm curious, other tactics that might be helpful with a personal or a founder-led brand.
Yeah, like I think Canva is amazing. I think you can use Canva or some people, I use Figma as well. Like that's a great platform. I think I like ChatGPT is great. AI is great for brainstorming and like
Yeah.
can even give you advice on your design.
So I think that I mentioned Canva specifically because I think that a lot of people are, let's say, carousels as one specific example. There's a lot
Yeah.
of tools I see now popping up that they say they help you auto create carousels. I don't know. I haven't found one that works, to be honest. I still do mine sort of manually in Canva. So there's tools popping up to serve this pain point. There are templates, there's tons of templates out there. So when it comes to something like a carousel, is there anything that you think, you mentioned faces, for example, work really well for, Caitlin's example or for anyone really. So I'm thinking of, let's say that example, are there any things you would do that would say, hey, this would make a successful carousel for yourself if you are thinking more about design and you want to go beyond that just existing template?
Yeah, yeah. So for carousel specifically, there's like a whole strategy
Tell
for
us
carousel.
the strategy.
Yeah, yeah. So carousels are really cool. So I think like you can just like put something together too and like it will be fine. But if you really want to like sort of hold attention and like really amplify your message, there are tactics that you can use. And so like in terms of the cover and like stopping the scroll and that sort of thing, like I said, faces are huge. Like people like it was something crazy about like your own face like gets like 60% like more engagement in any post. So like putting your face on it, some people find that cringy, but it does work. And then there's things like making sure the text, like the hook that you're writing for the carousel needs to be nice and like big and like making sure that it's not overwhelmed by like the graphics. So like the balance is really important. And then I think visual analogy is really, really powerful. Especially if you're going to do like a long form carousel, those ones are like really kind of like big right now. I don't know if you've seen them,
Yeah.
but there are people who do like huge, like 30-page
Okay, I
carousels.
do 20 pages. I haven't gone as far as 30 yet, but yes, I do the things you're talking about. So you'll see my face out there. But tell me more about these visual analogies.
Yeah, so like I actually read a whole book all about the psychology of like using visuals to like get attention and persuade people. And there's a whole chapter on visual analogy and how like when you have an idea and then you show it in a visual analogy, it's like something unique and different. I'll show one of mine I think worked really well. So this is one that I did here. This is about how visual chaos creates confusion, right? And so this visual analogy of like biting into an apple and then there's an egg inside, like this creates like a visceral reaction in someone's brain and like connects the message so well. So you can see like if I just wrote visual chaos creates confusion and then whatever, like yeah, like sure, they get the idea, but an actual visual like tells that story, there's science behind it that shows like it actually like lights up someone's brain, puts them into like puzzle mode, right? And that's really powerful because as people are scrolling the feed, their brains are like lazy sleepy mode. Okay. They're just like passive, like they're just sort of like chilling. And so when you use visual analogy and also like infographics and that sort of thing, you're actually like turning your audience's brain from like sleepy mode to like active mode. And so they actually digest and understand your content better. So it's kind of a cool, it's kind of amazing. So you can use, yeah, visual analogy, also infographics like this one here, right? Like the visual sales funnel, like in your carousels and also as image posts, right? To amplify what your message is. So that's something I think that's just so cool.
I love these. Have you heard or have you used Napkin? I think it's Napkin at it.
I think I've heard of that. Is that the one that does like a sort of like a sketchy infographic?
Yeah. Like it does infographics, like you give it, it tries, right? So you give it text, it tries to give you infographics. I would say though, I mean, there's real infographics and then there's just putting information in a graphical format that's not quite communicating. So I think sometimes you end up with that, which is just like, it looks like a graphic, but it's not saying anything. I think that's an
Mm.
interesting tool. I've been experimenting with it, but are there any, I don't know, any processes that you use to come up with the visuals? Because what you showed, those two are very powerful. The sales funnel is a bit more traditional because it's a funnel. But like
Yeah.
what was your process like when you created that apple and egg to get that final result?
Yeah, yeah. So I do a mix of things. So I'll go into ChatGPT and I have a prompt that gets it to take an idea and then it breaks it down into the connections and connotations around each. So it gives me a bunch of words that are connected to it. And then it just kind of gets me thinking. And then I have a Pinterest board that I keep of like really different like I have a Pinterest board I can kind of like go back to. And the Apple one was actually one that I had seen. I'm like, oh, this works perfectly for what I'm trying to do. So I recreated it for this concept. So, it's definitely like not the easiest thing just to do, but like there are people who I find like can own one thing. Like there's some people who do infographics really well and like all their content strategy is infographics and they're just killing it. So if this is something that, is something you want to explore in your brand, then do it, right? But I do understand that it's also like a lot of work. And if you
Yeah.
don't geek out on it as much as some people, like maybe it's not for everybody, but yeah.
I think just deciding which, as a marketer, I would think like which bets do I think are going to be something I want to take and invest more in maybe that specific graphic or that specific report or whatever piece of content I was working on. So I think like for me, the way I approach visuals as well, or when I work with founders, if we have something that we think the message will really resonate, then we'll spend the time to do the visual. So again, it all comes back to like, what are you trying to say? And the visual can only help you say that thing if it's something your audience would be interested in. It's like the next layer. But I think you always start with something like what do you want to say, and is it something that you think um, other people that you care about want to hear?
Yeah, and I think, if you're going to choose, like think about what your main message of your brand is, right? Like having a visual example and like an infographic framework of that is just going to make it way more memorable to your audience. And it's also like a sales tool, right? Because you're really like embedding it in your audience's mind on a deeper level when you do
Yeah.
that. And so I think combining it with like, okay, what's the main message of the brand? How can we convey this with visual analogy or infographics to like really embed it? Because I know it's a lot of it is about repetition, right? Like we're just repeating ourselves over and over and over. Well, how can you use visuals to like show it in different ways and make it memorable?
So I'm curious, Sarah, I'm kind of thinking about the trends or things that are happening right now. Is there any like pet peeve you have in the sort of trends you see coming out or things that just really annoy you as a designer that you see a lot of people doing? We talked about like what people used to be doing a few years ago, copying like maybe the gradient from Stripe, maybe that got annoying, or maybe it's the AI stuff now. Anything else that's really like off-putting for you as a designer?
I think it's tough because the trends are everywhere and it's hard to see because we're kind of like living in it, right? And so I think it's just like really important just to like do that contrast check and make sure that you're not just like stealing like what everyone else is
Yeah.
doing. Before I do a branding work, I always get people like show like their like brands or whatever. Like we got to make sure we don't copy those. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can be inspired by someone else, but I've seen people look way too much like other people. Like it's not good because when someone sees you, they're thinking about this other person, right? And when
Yeah.
when someone sees your brand, you want them to think about you, right? And not some other person. And so I've seen people who are just like copying other people and, maybe unintentionally, but it's like, oh, like,
I
you
think
know,
it's easy. It's like short run, oh, it seems like it can work. But like if you're trying to build a brand that's going to last and something, long term, it doesn't work. Yeah. Can't
yeah.
work.
And I think another part of that too is like if you just to if you just like polish, like if you just make it look good, right? Like that used to be like, that used to work great. Like back, 5, 10 years ago, if your website looks good, you're good to go, right? For
Yeah.
B2B. Now, like that's just like the baseline. Like you can't just look polished or anymore. You need something that's unique to you. And so I think that's a big pet peeve I see too, is just people are like, oh, I'm just gonna make myself, just get a really good designer to like make me look high end. It's
Yeah.
like, well, but you're not like there's nothing to you. Like there's nothing
There's nothing
unique
there.
about what you
Yeah.
do. And so I think the industry is changing a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's a shift.
Are there any rebrands that you've seen recently? Because I wanted to share one on my end that I saw that did a really good job to like really do something different. So like the one I'm thinking of is Gamma. If you've ever used the tool Gamma, it's like an AI kind of PowerPoint. They do presentations. I believe it's Gamma.app. I don't think it's Gamma AI. Let me double check. Gamma.app should be. Yeah, so it's Canva.app. They're pretty big right now, and they just went through a rebrand in the last, I don't know, I want to say 2-3 months. And I think they got away from the gradient thing that they were using for so long, and they did this kind of baby blue, kind of this new look, and I really like it. I think it
Mm.
really stands out to me as something very different, and yeah, I like the work that they put into that and to communicate this world of possibilities that you can do with their tool. So, are there any rebrands that you've seen lately that, in good or bad ways, have stuck out?
Yeah, and I'd love to share my screen and just talk through it, Gamma,
Yeah.
because I'm seeing some like definitely distinctive. Like look at these illustration styling, like the colorful, like quirky, like look at this, right? Even with like the curved shape, like all that is really distinctive. That's
Yeah.
really unique to them. This is something you don't see for the usual AI. I think that's really smart. I also love their logo. I think that's another thing. Some people try to do too much with their logos, man. Like, like
Yeah.
the evolution of every huge brand, they simplify. They do not add to the logo. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
your logo doesn't need, a spotlight in the stage anymore, right? So I love how it's just like a really kind of quirky, like they're using like like the typography is really unique and different. I think that's really smart. It's just a logo type with like it's adding like this quirky style with the typography choices. I think that's really smart. Yeah, this is a great. Oh wow. Yeah, this is very I love it. I love
Yeah.
that another one that I love is clay, right? Like it's literally they just do clay. Like their name is Clay and they
Yeah.
have clay elements. Like how it's simple and like, you know what I mean? But it's so well done and it's so unique to them, right? Like
Yeah.
how I love it. I think it's just like such
Absolutely.
a like especially in like this industry, I think this is like everyone's like going super sleek, right? So
Yeah.
just to have
Like this is like the data stuff, and it's just like it could be really boring as a product, but this isn't. This is really it's fun. It's fun to look at.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, I
love
think this
it.
is really cool. I think they did a really good
Can
job.
you scroll back up to that section, especially that section by itself? Like, just look at that ISO, GDPR. Like, these are like the most boring things in the world, but they're like cute clay flowers. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say like, so I think Kit also did a rebrand. Let's see, like ConvertKit. So to Kit, let's see. And there's actually and I feel like the new typography is a little bit trendy. I think actually the color palette, this is actually one that I'm like, it's
Yeah.
a little bit leaning into like kind of what the trends are right now. Everyone's kind of trying to do like this poppy, colorful, like quirky font thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is actually one I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't think they actually have something that's really distinct. I think it looks really good. Like I think this is great design. I don't know. I wonder in a couple years if it's gonna look a little bit like
Yeah, I would say it doesn't feel as memorable to me as
yeah.
the other two that we just looked at. I mean, we're just picking examples that have come up, to us, but
This is
it feels safe. That's cool. They almost
this
should have
is
gone
cool.
more with
Yeah.
something like that up higher.
Yeah, exactly. I would like this style is really neat. That would have been something that I would have embedded maybe a little bit more into it.
Yeah.
But this is just their website, so you'd have to check out their
Yeah.
socials and all that stuff too. But yeah, this is one where I'm like, it's a bit like the typography trends. Like something you can check is like Creative Market is like my go-to for like all the design things. But like trending, like there's a big like I don't know where is it? Yeah, that type of font is just like really. I have to do a deeper dive to find it. But yeah, that type of font I think is a little bit trendy. But yeah,
As we're in, you kind of you're touching on I have a question I want to ask you about like toolkits, or you mentioned Creative Market. I think I used Creative Market a few years ago to buy like a WordPress template or something. Are
Yeah.
there like tools or websites or whatever, like are there things that you find really useful as a designer that you think everyone should be using? And maybe some of them are obvious, but maybe they're not obvious to everyone. Obviously, we touched on Canva. I don't need to mention that, but I would say like there's like the brand section within Canva is something I only use in the last like year or so, where you're like, you can make everything your own brand colors. I think people don't even use that as much as I think that they could. Are there other tools or resources or things that people might find useful?
Yeah, I'm quite as like simplest when it comes to
That's
this stuff.
great. That's
I
great.
don't actually use a whole lot. Like I showed you Creative Market. I use that to find like I go to font websites to like find really like the fonts for brand design. But yeah, I honestly like Canva, Figma, ChatGPT. Like
Those are
I
your
don't
tools.
actually use like a lot of tools. I feel like I'm not answering the question very well. Maybe I'll think of something else, but yeah, I don't use a lot of things, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, that's fine as well. I mean, I think knowing, Canva, where would we be without Canva, especially as a marketer? But I think, are there any things that you use within Canva that you find particular, like nitty gritty, anything that's super useful that you think everyone should be using?
Yeah, so like the reason I love Canva so much is it kind of creates like this system for your whole brand. And so where I've created like probably 100 carousels now and like 100 graphics in there, like okay. Um so if I go into Canva, so it kind of creates like this system of like references so you don't have to redo everything. I know like for people who are creating a lot of content, it's like it's a lot, right? And so having everything in one place is like it's really the reason I love Canva so much. And like I use other platforms like Photoshop and Illustrator and Figma, but none of them even come close to how like you can actually sort of reference and sort of build from stuff that you've already created. And I think as like content creator, like I don't have to start from scratch ever. And I even like make my own templates, right? So I have a template in here that I created that's like all my best covers for carousels. It's all like my page designs and stuff like that. So that's kind of like a big thing.
Do you still do the carousels, I guess, manually? Like you're still in Canva with a template, but you're still manually. You haven't found any AI tool to magically create the images for you.
Yeah, I don't think at like what I do, I don't think I could just because I'm
Yeah.
so like meticulous about it.
So
But I,
we talked
yeah,
about Gamma because the Gamma does have that functionality, but I've tried it. And I think if you have a distinctive design and you do have something you really want to communicate, it might be too limiting for you. So essentially, it'd be fine if you just did text title and that's it and not really big on the images. But I'm yet to see a tool that can do the work. So I just want to say, if you ever see my carousel or your carousels out there was a lot of work that went into them. And I would say for good content, I think there just is. No matter how much you use AI, I think there's limits, especially on the visual side so far from what I've seen.
yeah, and I like it's a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
I understand why people don't want to put as much work into it. And so like you want to think about like, sometimes it's just better to put it out there and just like especially if you're just starting out and you're putting content out, like who cares about a lot of this stuff? Just like put it out there, see what works, see what people are resonating with, and then you can refine it later,
Yeah.
honestly,
I would
right?
say it depends on what phase you're in, right? When I was at, 2 years ago myself versus now, I might have thought things differently, but now I do have a brand that I'm trying to. I want people to know it's me when they see certain colors, and so, yeah, yeah, it depends on your stage, your
Yeah,
phase.
if you've got your reps in and you're like, yeah, like just add it in
Yeah,
and
yeah.
challenge yourself, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of our conversation here. Is there any like final piece of advice or last thing that you would like us to know? So this could be for founders, or again, anyone building a personal brand, anyone who cares that they know design is important, but they maybe haven't taken it seriously just yet.
Yeah, so I think it's just really important to be careful about who you hire for design. Like we talked about, like if you have a really clear vision for what you want and you have your messaging in place and you have like some ideas where you want to go, you can really just hire any designer who like has a really good portfolio and will be able to execute that for you. But if you don't and you need someone who to like guide you through that process, like most like brand strategists and like designers don't actually know what it takes to stand out in the feed and actually like create something that's going to work for this like content first world that we're just now kind of going into. And so I just always like make sure you check people's work and see like, you know, what their portfolio looks like. Did they actually do stuff that's like different and unique? You know, I've had friends who worked with, you know, brand agencies who like just didn't know. Like my friend wanted to stand out and you know, all they knew how to do was like, you know, make their colors more vibrant, right? Like that was the only thing
Right.
they knew how to do to make them like different, right? And so you know, there's a lot of you know, people you can hire out there, but they don't necessarily know how to help you differentiate yourself in the way that you need to kind of going forward.
Would there be any question or questions that you think would be helpful to help identify the right designer if they were trying to hire someone?
I think it's like looking at their work. Like if you look
Okay.
at their portfolio, like I think people get like dazzled by how amazing it looks. Some designers are really, really good designers. But if you look at how it looks in comparison to like the industry that it's in, and if it looks like like a template that you know what I mean? Like we're talking about the blue purple gradient for
Yeah.
AI, you know what I mean? Like if it looks like that, or if they did like a health and wellness brand and it's got a leaf you
Yeah.
know, and like tranquil vibe. It's like they might not be able to help you differentiate because they're kind of just doing what everyone else is doing. So it's more about like kind of seeing their work. A lot of people talk about standing out too, and they don't actually know. So yeah, it can be tough.
Love to see some visuals, and maybe it's something I need to make, but I would love to go get like all the companies that have the purple and blue gradient and put them all together and then do like all the like leaves or something and just show what you're saying right now, because I hear you, but I'm like thinking, okay, I want to see all those companies that are using these sort of cliched or sort of like, I don't know, copied versions, because I think that's so interesting too if you could see them all together.
I do actually do. I have one.
You do? Okay, I want to see this. This is like, it came into my mind. Like, I wish this existed.
I do. I did it for like the AI note taker industry. I was just like,
There's a lot of yeah. I use granola, by the way, which I quite like, and it's different than some of the other ones. I'm not
yeah, let me
sponsored by
just
them.
find this
Granola,
graphic
you can
here.
sponsor me if you want. I just like them.
I haven't heard of granola. I'll have to check
It's one
them
of those
out.
that it was like if you signed up for Lenny's podcast or Lenny's newsletter, if you became a paid subscriber, you would get that as like a free gift. So I think the product manager community really likes it. It doesn't have to join your meetings. That's why it's cool. So it just can do it like without joining your meetings. So it's a little less like sketchy feeling.
Okay, so this is
Oh
six
my
different AI
gosh.
note takers. Okay, this is six different AI note takers.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, so, you know, like, how hard is it for one of these guys just to use green or something?
No, okay,
Like,
that's so funny
come
because
now.
go to granola.ai, and just see how they stand out. It's
They're,
green. It's
granola
visually,
gets
yeah,
it.
it's different.
Granola gets it. And look, they're still doing it's very polished, it's very clean, but they know like
At
to
least
not
they're
use that.
not purple and blue. So yeah.
And since I did this post, I think I've found another like six more. So it's like literally everyone looks like this. So that's an
Oh
example
my
of like
gosh.
what that looks like, right? So
I love that. Okay, you're inspiring me to do something. So when I release this podcast episode, I want to, I always try to show instead of tell, and I think with visuals help you to do that. I will say, I said at the beginning of this podcast that brand is my worst. If you take marketing as brand, product, and growth, I tend to spend most of my time in product and growth, and I'm a content person, which is weird because I didn't do a lot of brand, but that's just. Anyway, I'm really making a conscious effort to try to be someone that takes it more seriously, because I do agree with it being so important nowadays. So yeah, I thank you for your time and sharing these things with me and with the audience, because I think there's a lot to learn. If there are any other resources you want to share, I can always link them in the show notes, and I send out a newsletter as well with the highlights. So you mentioned some prompts. If you want to share any of those with us, that would be super useful.
yeah, I'll give you my contrast check prompt so you can make
Okay.
sure that you're not blending in with everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. You're just such a fantastic host.